Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Red Pill Garage. Does your car have a CVT transmission? You're probably thinking, what is a CVT transmission? CVT stands for Continuously Variable Transmission. It doesn't have gears like a typical automatic transmission, but in some cases it will have a launch gear. And the way it works, you have a belt or a chain that runs on cone-shaped pulleys, thus providing continuous variation. Also, both fuel consumption and emissions are greatly reduced. So sit back and relax and let me teach you guys how to service a CVT transmission. Okay, to start off with, you're going to need an oil transfer pump of some sort. There's a few different types on the market. These are the two that I like to use. And that one there holds about half a litre of oil. Nice and easy and simple to use. And that's a different styled one. And that's where I pour the clean oil into the tank. And that's the measuring scale. The pump lever. And the outlet hose that goes into the transmission. Pretty simple to use. And you're going to also need a drip tray, preferably something that holds at least 5 litres of oil. And there's the measuring scale just there. It also gives you an indication on how much oil you need to pour back into the transmission. Okay, let's look at the parts that we're going to need for our tranny service. That's our transmission oil, CVT fluid, FE, the latest generation from Toyota. And that's the part number of that particular oil. It's a 4 litre tin, but in reality we're going to be using about 5 litres of oil. So you're going to need to buy 2 tins. And that's our filter for our transmission. And that's the part number for the filter. Okay, next is our filter O-ring. And that's the part number for the O-ring. And I'll just show you where that goes. Just around there. And next is our pan gasket. Now this actual pan gasket is not cork or paper. It's actually a steel gasket, which means it's a one-use item. You can only use it the one time. And that's the part number for that gasket. Okay, the tools I'll be using today is the 1/2 inch impact gun, 1/2 inch torque wrench, a 3/8 drive torque wrench, a 1/4 inch torque wrench, 1/2 inch ratchet, 3/8 ratchet, extension bar, 10mm socket, 24mm socket, 6mm Allen key socket, an extension and another extension, 6mm Allen key, torch, electric screwdriver, trim removing tool, thread drive air ratchet, scraper and WD-40. And don't forget your safety glasses. Okay, next it's time to remove the wheel. Now when doing this at home, make sure you use good quality jack stands and place the wheel under the car, so if something was to go wrong and the car was to fall, it would land on the wheel, not on yourself. Okay, next I'm going to remove the plastic tray under the car. Okay, next with the trim removing tool, I'm going to remove the side panel. Okay, next we want to remove the filler plug, and what you've got to look for is the lettering FE, and that's the plug that you have to remove. And there it is there. So that gives you a good indication you're going to remove the correct one. Okay, once you've unscrewed the plug, just make sure you don't lose the aluminium gasket or washer, because we need to reuse that again. Now on a typical tranny, we would call that the drain plug, but on these CVT transmissions it's actually called an overflow plug. Okay, next I'm going to remove the overflow plug with a 6mm Allen key socket and ratchet. Now you're probably thinking this is pretty easy. Once I unscrew the overflow plug, it's going to drain out all the oil from the transmission. In reality, it won't drain anywhere near the amount of oil sitting in that pan, because in that overflow plug hole there's a transmission filler tube, and that's got to be removed. And any mechanic with half a brain would know to remove that filler tube, all the oil from that pan will come out. And for those of you who are not mechanics and don't know, if you were to miss this step, you're actually going to drain out about 1.2 litres out of the transmission instead of the 5 litres. So basically it defeats the purpose of doing the transmission service, because you'll be using clean oil mixing in with dirty oil and you'll be wasting your time and money. And there's our oil filler tube itself. That's what it looks like, it's just a piece of plastic. Okay, next I'm going to refit the oil filler tube into the overflow plug hole. And with the torque wrench, you need to set the torque wrench at 2 Newton meters of torque. And that's it. That's all it needs. Okay, next we can refit the overflow plug. And you can nip that up. Don't fully tighten it just yet, because we have to remove it again. Okay, here's the fun part. Now it's time to remove the transmission pan. Now when you get to your last bolt, you want to make sure you hold that pan very carefully, because it's going to hold roughly about 4 litres of oil. And you don't want to go spilling it all over yourself. And over here, I'll give it a quick wipe down on this filter, and you can actually see the difference in colour there. That dark grey you see there, that's wear and tear from your bearings, your chain and your belt, things of that nature. Okay, there's our oil filler tube. And there's our pan magnets. There should be 3 of them in this particular tranny. And that silver stuff that you see there, that's metal fragments floating around in the transmission and sticking to the magnet. So the magnet's actually doing its job. Okay, next I'm going to remove the transmission filter. Now, usually transmission filters have 3 bolts that hold them in place. 1 long bolt and 2 short ones. Just keep in mind where they go so you don't get them mixed up. And with the last bolt, just turn it a couple of turns so the filter dislodges loose to drain the rest of the oil out of the filter. If you want your tranny to last 200,000 Ks or more with trouble-free motoring, you need to change the oil every 50,000 kilometres. Now a CVT transmission, when it does fail, and the average cost you'll be expected to pay on a CVT tranny is anywhere from $4,000 to $7,500. And that's one expensive tranny. Okay, next, remove the filter O-ring. Now it's important that you don't forget to remove that O-ring, otherwise when you go to put the new one on there, you run the risk of cracking the filter. And there's our new filter and our old one, so you want to make sure they're the same. Then you want to apply a bit of oil to lube up that O-ring so it slips in nice and easy. Okay, next I'm going to fit the new oil filter. And remember when I said earlier you'll have 1 long bolt and 2 short ones? You want to make sure you get those in the right spot. There's our long and short. And don't forget to tighten all 3 bolts up. Here I just wanted to show you guys how much oil I pulled out of that transmission. And you can see here there's about 5 litres of oil. Now if you were to pull out about 1.2 litres out of that transmission, that means you forgot to remove the transmission oil filler tube. Okay, next I'm going to give a thorough clean to these transmission pan magnets. And that's what it's supposed to look like once it's clean. And that's the second one. Now you'll soon see when I give this magnet here a clean up, it's going to leave a silvery film on the rag. And that's all tiny bits of metal fragments floating around in the transmission. Now that's the job of the magnet, to collect those metal fragments that doesn't float around the transmission. And now I'll be removing the pan gasket with the scraper. And once that's done, you want to give the inside of that pan a very thorough clean. And just take your time doing it. You want to make sure you do a good job and don't leave any metal fragments lying around. And that's the end result. That's what you should get. That's one magnet there, the second, and the third. So that's a nice clean pan there. On goes a new gasket. And just make sure the bottom of the transmission's nice and clean before refitting the pan back on there. Now when refitting the transmission pan, you want to make sure you've got at least 4 bolts close by, and you want to screw 1 bolt in each corner. Just makes things a lot easier when fitting it back on there. Once you've got all the bolts in, you want to do about 3 or 4 passes. Never tighten the transmission pan up in one shot. You want to do it nice and even and just take your time doing it. Okay, now I'm going to remove the overflow plug. And the reason why we're doing this, because now it's time to pump oil into the transmission, and we're going to wait for the oil to come out from the overflow plug hole. Once that happens, then it's time to screw the plug back in for the next step. And for now, just nip up that overflow plug, don't fully tighten it up just yet. And the same goes for the refill plug, just nip that up. Okay, this next step is very important. We need to make sure we have the correct amount of oil in the transmission. What we need to do now is to take the shift lever out of park and run it through all the gears, 3 seconds in each gear, back in park, and let it idle for 30 seconds. Now the car needs to be dead level, so you want to make sure before you do this step, you've got jack stands at the back of the car and it's absolutely level, because we need to check the level of the transmission oil. Okay, after you've reached the 30 seconds, you can shut the engine off, and now it's time to recheck the oil level. And what you'll find when you go to unscrew the overflow plug, no oil will come out, so it needs to be re-topped up again. Okay, there you have it, no oil dripping out. Okay, after this first step, what you'll need to do, you'll need to repeat this procedure another 2 times. So you'll have to go back in the car, start the engine up, move the shift lever from park all the way down through the gears and wait for 3 seconds in each gear position, then back in park. Then let the engine idle for 30 seconds, turn the engine off and recheck the oil level until you achieve a trickle like that. Then you can screw the overflow plug back inside the hole and you're pretty much done. And now we can finally tighten our overflow plug, and it's going to be 40 Newton meters of torque. And our refill plug will be torqued down to 49 Newton meters of torque. And finally what I do, I give it a quick hit of some brake cleaner. Just makes it a lot easier, you don't have to degrease it and wash it down and make a mess everywhere. The brake cleaner will slowly evaporate by itself. And next, refit the side cover. And the plastic guard under the car. And now I'm going to lubricate the wheel studs with a bit of WD-40. You can spray it in a downward motion or parallel, but you don't want to get any overspray on the face of the disc. And now it's time to fit the wheel and the wheel nuts. Now when you're torquing up your wheel nuts, you always want to go in a crisscross action, never in a circular action. And on this particular car, it's a 2017 Toyota Corolla. I'm going to set the torque wrench to 103 Newton meters of torque. Just make sure when you're torquing up your wheel nuts, the tyre's only just touching the ground. You don't want the full weight of the car on the tyre until you're finished. Once they're all torqued up, you can now drop the full weight of the car down. And there you have it, guys. That's how you properly service a CVT transmission. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button not to miss out on any future videos. And I'll see you on the next episode of Red Pill Garage. Thank you for watching.